Tonight we are not chasing shootouts or legends. Tonight we are riding on garbage trucks before dawn, standing beside concrete pours at sunrise, and walking through laundries, fish markets, garages, vending routes, dumpsters, casinos, and quiet funeral homes. All the boring places that quietly made certain families very comfortable. This is a calm crime story about influence that hides in invoices, parking tickets, linen bags, and loading docks. Settle in, close your eyes, and follow the soft connections through garbage, cement, and laundry, the Mafia's most boring businesses. The city at dawn is half asleep and half pretending. Narrow streets between brownstones shine with last night's rain, and the only real movement comes from the slow roll of a truck painted in tired white. The driver takes a sip of weak coffee. The helper swings off the back, boots hitting the pavement with a soft thud. Metal cans rattle, lids clack. A gull complains somewhere over the river. It is a small empire starting its morning shift. No sirens, no shouting, no radio voice barking orders. Only the low engine idle and the scrape of steel on asphalt. This is how quiet power likes to sound. The neighborhood likes routine. Monday for this side of the avenue, Tuesday for the next. People do not think in those terms. They just know the trash vanished. It is simple. You put your bags out, and they go away. You pay the bill that appears, and it does not seem like a question. Behind that simplicity is a man named Carlo. He is not the boss from Whispered Legends. He is the man who phones the bosses, and who has learned that steady voices travel farther than loud ones. His office is on a second floor over a small storefront in Brooklyn, near the water, where trucks can come and go without drawing attention. The door is narrow, the stairs are steep. The sign downstairs says carting in plain letters, and the phone number is memorized by half the restaurant owners in the borough. Carlo starts his day with a clipboard and a pencil. No fancy suit, no need. A grey jacket, clean shirt, shoes that have walked many sidewalks. He checks names, routes, balances. He sees which diner is late, which nightclub is suddenly light on payments, which new bakery has opened and chosen a different hauler. He does not shout about it. He circles a name and sets the pencil down. Later in the morning, he visits. The first stop is a family restaurant that has served the same red sauce since before the war. The owner wipes his hands on a towel and smiles when he sees Carlo. They talk about the coffee. They talk about the rain. Carlo mentions gently that the balance is a little behind. The owner blushes, apologizes, explains that a supplier raised prices without warning. Carlo nods and says they will stretch it another month. He suggests in the quietest possible way that it would be simpler if they stayed on his company route plan instead of shopping around. By the time Carlo leaves, the owner feels looked after. The second stop is different. A nightclub that reinvented itself 3 times in 5 years. New lights, new sign, same late payments. Inside, the manager is smooth and restless. He tries jokes, excuses, a shrinking stack of bills. Carlo listens, patient. He does not talk about what happens if the trash is not picked up. He talks about what happens if some other company takes the job and starts asking questions about what goes into the bags, about bottles and receipts and papers that might land in the wrong hands. The manager understands. The balance will be cleared. The contract stays. Carlo is not alone in this work. He answers to men with older surnames and quieter habits. Some came from East Harlem corners, some from Brooklyn streets, some from New Jersey towns with big warehouses and small city halls. Long ago they learned that a city cannot argue with garbage. Trash has to move. Rats and smell and complaints make mayors nervous, So whoever makes the trash move on time every time earns a certain respect. In New York, if you wanted to run a private carting company for certain neighborhoods, you did not buy a truck and print cards. You entered what people quietly called the club. You paid the right fees, you stayed within your assigned blocks, you did not undercut the agreed rates. In return, your trucks did not break down mysteriously, your drivers did not find slashed tires, and inspectors found your paperwork comfortingly complete. From the sidewalk, none of this looked dramatic. It looked like men working hard at dawn. That was the point. There were friendly faces in city offices too. A clerk who knew which forms could rest in a drawer for a few extra days. A supervisor who suggested that a certain company was known for reliability and should handle the new contract. A council aide who enjoyed long lunches and understood that campaign donations arrived beside promises of clean alleys and tidy storefronts. These arrangements were not written on walls. They lived in nods, in envelopes under coffee cups, in long habits. You could stand on a Manhattan corner, watch the trucks come and go, and never see a single argument. On a gentle spring afternoon, Carlo meets that of those friendly faces in a diner near City Hall. The place smells of grilled onions and old coffee. A reporter counts coins at the counter. Outside, traffic mumbles past. They discuss an upcoming bid for waterfront routes. The city man mentions that some members want to invite companies from outside. Carlo smiles politely and points out how disruptive it could be to have strangers handling peer pickups, how it might create confusion with unions, schedules, and storage. He speaks about stability and public health. He never mentions anything harsher. By the end of the lunch, the city man agrees that stability matters. That night, in a back room above the carting office, Carlo sits with two older men whose names are not on any door. One has hands marked by work, the other wears simple glasses and listens. They go over numbers, bids, and the list of companies allowed to submit. Some names are circled, others are crossed out. "We keep it calm," one of the men says. "No noise. If someone wants to be brave, they find their trucks waiting behind long lines of inspectors. That is all." Carlo nods. Calm is his specialty. The real trick is that the service works. If a restaurant needs an extra pickup after a busy weekend, the truck appears. If a hotel complains about a missed collection, Carlo calls the driver and the route is adjusted. Holidays, storms, blackouts, the trash still moves. Out-of-town companies rarely keep that rhythm because they do not know which alleys flood or which super expects a knock at the door. So the city stays attached to its quiet cartel without ever using that word. On Staten Island, where landfills rise like artificial hills, workers in boots and masks wave trucks into place. A few supervisors understand which loads to weigh with a generous eye and which to measure firmly. Weight becomes numbers on a page, and numbers can be guided as long as nobody gets greedy and no one stops the flow. At home, Carlo lives in a brick house on a quiet block. Neighbors see him as the trash man in the best sense, reliable, respectful. His wife manages the children, school and church, and visits to grandparents. On summer evenings, he grills in the yard and waves to the man next door. No flashy cars, no guards, no drama. When a new carting company tries to underbid in one of his best neighborhoods, the response moves like a slow tide. First, a conversation. One of Carlos' people visits the newcomer. Explains the way things are done. Very polite. Suggests a different set of streets to try. Offers an introduction to a safer patch. The newcomer refuses. Second, delays. Their trucks find themselves stuck behind construction, behind stalled vehicles. in front of inspectors checking brakes and emissions. The fines are small but annoying. Routes fall behind. Clients notice missed pickups. Third, an example. A long-time restaurant owner tries the newcomer, then calls Carlo back. In the heat, the cans sat too long. The smell crept into the dining room. Nobody raises a voice. Nobody needs to. The newcomer adjusts and accepts their place on the informal map. Carlo ends those days the same as any other. At the kitchen table after the children sleep, with a notebook and a cooling cup of coffee, he checks that customers are covered, drivers paid, city friends thanked. He believes in keeping his people working, his routes tight, his records neat. He believes in steady respect and quiet reminders. In another borough, Detective Russo keeps a thin file on private carting. He has heard stories from other cities of rougher methods and darker errands. His own notes are small things: shared directors, matching addresses, a company that changed its name but not its office, route out that never cross without permission. He drives the early streets sometimes, following trucks through lower Manhattan and over bridges. He watches men in worn jackets lift cans and toss bags. Just work in the dim blue morning, with the skyline yawning awake. One dawn, Russo parks near a row of restaurants as Carlos' truck turns the corner. He sees the helper wave to the owner, sees an envelope pass to the cab. It could be receipts. It could be a holiday bonus. It could be anything. Russo makes a note and goes for coffee. The quiet empire does not need anyone to be unalived. It does not need broken windows or loud warnings. Its strength is that people want their garbage gone and do not want to think about how. So lean back and breathe with the slow rhythm of the city. Picture side streets at twilight, bags lined by the curb, the soft growl of the truck arriving on time. Inside each cab sits a man like Carlo, who understands that the surest power is that it never has to raise its voice. The city sleeps easier when cans are empty and sidewalks are clear. Somewhere above a modest carting office, figures are checked, names underlined, new deals shaped with gentle hands. For now, rest with the thought that beneath the humming lights the garbage keeps moving on schedule, and the quiet empire keeps its promise to make the mess vanish before morning. Chapter 2: Concrete Dreams and Slow-Setting Deals. The city changes shape when the sun hits wet cement. On the edge of Brooklyn, in early morning, a batch plant wakes up. Silars stand like quiet sentries. Mixers turn slow circles. Grey slurry slides into spinning drums. It looks like the dullest substance on earth. It is not. For a small circle of patient men, cement is destiny poured at walking speed. Angelo runs the office in this part of the story. He is in his 40s, sleeves rolled, tie slightly off-center, voice mild and steady. His plant supplies concrete to jobs in Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, and across to New Jersey when favored customers call. Sidewalks, towers, church steps, highway ramps, basement slabs in old tenements, deep cores for new glass dreams. On his wall hangs a calendar of delivery windows. Under his desk lives a short list of names that always go first. Angelo inherited the system from men who remembered when a handshake in a Little Italy club decided who poured for half the city. Back when union leaders, businessmen, and quiet bosses shared long tables in Midtown, wet cement was the slow river under everything. If you controlled the river, you did not need to shout. You only needed to schedule. On a Monday morning in late spring, a foreman named Richie calls from a big downtown site. Steel already rises. Developers are eager. Investors grow nervous. A continuous pour is planned for the foundation core. Once it starts, it cannot stop without disaster. Richie speaks fast. Angelo listens slow. The order is huge. If the trucks fail, if the mix is wrong, the result is a hardened mistake and angry lawyers. Angelo knows. He also knows Richie did not pick his plant by chance. Richie had been told, very softly, that he was in, as long as he remembered who kept him from bad bids and late trucks. Angelo looks at the board. Many smaller orders can move. Sidewalk patches, parking lot repairs, a church basement. They will wait. He clears the line for Richie, calls allied companies for backup trucks, lines up drivers he trusts. He talks only about reliability, not about power. By noon, drums are turning, heading across bridges in a slow grey parade. The union representative for the drivers stops by the office. An old friend. They drink coffee at the metal desk. The drivers want fair hours, safe trucks, solid checks. Angelo wants peace. The arrangement is simple. The important jobs never miss their loads. If some stranger plant tries to cut in on those jobs, maybe trucks get delayed, or inspectors decide to be extra thorough. Nothing loud, just time, applied like a gentle brake. Out at the site, concrete flows down chutes into waiting forms. Workers guide it, machines buzz, the grey surface gleams wet in the sun. To passers-by, it is only cement. They do not see the favours and phone calls that chose that mix. Weddings may be the softest boardrooms. In a queen's banquet hall glowing with warm lights, a young couple dances. The bride is a contractor's daughter, the groom is a quiet accountant. Families fill long tables, plates stacked with pasta and roasted chicken. At one table, Angelo sits with a city inspector and a union man. They toast the couple, talk about school sports, vacations, aging parents. No one has to say that a new highway extension will need a reliable plant. Later, under the music, the inspector notes that the project will require someone steady. Angelo nods. The union man vouches. In a corner, an out-of-town salesman offers the contractor a brochure for cheaper concrete. The contractor smiles, accepts the paper, and glances at Angelo. The real decision is already poured in. Occasionally, someone does not get the hint. A small independent supplier in Jersey City decides to go bold. They underbid a major foundation job along the river. Their trucks are fresh, painted bright. Their sales pitch is full of confidence. The morning of their first big pour, a series of small and very boring events unfold. A traffic jam locks their lead truck behind an accident on a bridge. An inspector appears at their plant to ask about recent paperwork, slowing the next truck. A miscommunication over cement mix codes forces a load to be dumped and remade. Nothing dramatic. No sabotage that would make headlines. Just enough friction to make them miss their window. The developer, anxious and pacing, gets a call from Richie, who casually mentions that Angelo could have had trucks on site before sunrise. By the end of the week, the independent supplier is quietly reassigned to small sidewalks in distant suburbs, grateful to have any work at all. The big project returns to the familiar river. This is how influence feels in this world. Like a schedule that never favours you until you learn whose number to call. In a modest social club in Little Italy, older men still gather at night. The neighbourhood changes, but certain chairs stay filled. They remember when families divided trades the way they divided streets. Garbage routes here, concrete plants there, docks, trucks, night spots all assigned. They speak quietly of long-gone bosses, old judges, famous cases. They remember when major civic centres rose on friendly concrete. Now there are federal cases, cameras, and laws with sharper teeth. But habits linger. Angelo visits when called. He listens more than he speaks. He brings updates. Which contractor is loyal? Which developer is restless? Which public office whispers about new bidding rules? Power cannot live only in stories. It lives in delivery logs and clocked hours. From the street, the cement trade looks like a lot of grey. Inside the grey are adjustments that matter. A favoured contractor calls for a rush order on a school. Angelo reshapes his day. Another firm, rude last year, gets moved to the afternoon. Over time, these shifts teach people where to show respect. An inspector with a flexible eye never finds trouble on sites that use the right plant. Other sites receive sharper attention. A banker hesitates on a risky tower until he hears that trusted suppliers stand behind the schedule. Then the numbers feel safer. Those who complain that the game is fixed are told a simple line: this is not fixing, it is reliability. You want concrete on time, you call the people who always show up. Late an evening, Detective Russo studies another thin file, this time on concrete. Names of plants, unions, consultants, addresses that repeat. Nothing explosive, just quiet links. He remembers watching a high-rise pour, trucks arriving in perfect order, grey sliding without pause. The foreman had called it beautiful, like music. Russo agreed, and made a note he never had time to follow. More urgent cases always called him away. The concrete file stayed thin, patient, waiting. Back at the plant, Angelo steps outside for evening air. The mixers are silent. Dust lies on the ground. The river smells of fuel and salt. The skyline glows in the distance. He thinks of his children at the table, his wife planning a family visit, the hospital wing they are bidding to supply. Supplying a hospital sounds noble. Supplying a bridge sounds heroic. To him it is batches, timing, and keeping everyone above him content. His ledger balances, workers earn pay, families buy food, developers get buildings, politicians get ribbon cuttings, union heads get steady jobs to show the members. Quiet shareholders in back rooms get their portion. Angelo says he is just concrete. Just the boring stuff holding up the interesting parts of life. Without his boring stuff, the interesting parts have no flaws. As you listen, imagine deep foundations under the streets. Thick grey slabs cooled long ago, forgotten by most. They hold offices, homes, shops, schools. Hidden inside them is a record of who got a call returned, who got an early truck, who sat at which wedding table. The tension here is soft, like cement setting overnight. No chase, no shouted threat. Just agreements layered until they feel like the natural order of things. Rest with the idea that in this world, many sharp edges were dulled by slow negotiation. Schedules adjusted, egos calmed, jobs shared. Chapter 3: Laundry, Steam and Spotless Ledgers. In the quiet hours before sunrise, the city smells faintly of soap. On the edge of an industrial strip in Queens, a low brick building glows behind frosted windows. Inside, rows of metal machines turn slow circles. Steam drifts up in soft clouds. The sound is a steady hush and hum, like distant waves rolling in and out on a cotton shore. This is the central linen service, or at least that is what the painted sign says. Hotels send their sheets here. Restaurants send tablecloths, napkins, uniforms. Hospitals send gowns and blankets. Every day, trucks arrive burdened with the small evidence of life lived in public. No one outside pays much attention. It is just laundry. Inside, a man named Vincent walks the floor with a clipboard in his hand and a faint smile that could mean anything. Vincent is in his 30s, thin, neatly dressed, with sleeves rolled just enough to show he is not afraid of work. His hair is combed, his shoes are clean, and his voice never needs to rise above the sound of the machines. He knows every client code by heart. He can tell you which hotel prefers heavier starch on collars and which restaurant needs extra care for red wine stains. He also knows, without ever saying it out loud, which invoices are real, which are adjusted, and which belong to friends of friends who like their numbers to come back softened. A truck backs up to the loading dock. The driver, Manny, hops down and opens the rear. Canvas bags slide forward marked with tags from an uptown hotel. 2 workers hoist them to carts. Vincent checks the manifest. A few lines on the page mean a full night's stay for hundreds of guests. The hotel manager never thinks about this building. They call a number, linen is collected, linen returns folded and bright. Reliability feels like magic when it works. It feels like someone cares. Behind the magic, there is a ledger. Vincent steps into his small upstairs office. No decoration beyond a calendar, a desk lamp, and 2 file cabinets that do not quite close. On his desk lies a thick book of entries in careful handwriting, and next to it, a slimmer book with fewer names and higher figures. The thick book is for auditors, taxes, and anyone official who may appear. The slim book is for another world. That world begins about 20 minutes away, in a quiet back room of a social club where older men drink coffee slowly and listen more than they speak. The laundry belongs partly to those men. It is perfect for them. Cash flows in, bills are paid, access is everywhere. Hotel staff, restaurant owners, hospital purchasing agents. All of them come to Vincent when there is a missing shipment, a late delivery, a favour needed. All of them get used to hearing his calm voice say, "We will fix it." The arrangement is gentle. If a certain restaurant wants its declared costs higher or lower, the laundry invoices can lean that way that month. If a friendly bar wants to show more customers on paper than actually showed up, extra linen can appear on the bill as if every stool stayed full. If a hotel wants a discreet favour, a quiet guest, a private event, Vincent knows which driver to send and which door to use. Nothing sharp, no headlines, just adjustments folded into the clean cotton. Downstairs, the soft hiss of steam rolls over the workers. Maria runs some of the big presses. She has been here 10 years. Her job is to feed damp sheets into the wide heated rollers and catch them as they slide out flat and warm. To her, this is simply work that pays the rent. She knows nothing about ledgers. She knows when the machine sounds wrong, when they are short-staffed, when the coffee in the break room is stale. She also knows Vincent always fixes problems before they grow. Overtime approved, a new hire brought in, a driver swapped off a bad route. Quiet power is easiest to accept when it keeps the machines running. Manny, the driver, knows a little more. His route runs through Midtown, down to the village, and across to Queen's hotels near the airport. He sees what most do not see. Which kitchens are spotless, which alleys hide extra bags, which managers slip envelopes into his hand along with their keys. One Tuesday evening, he pulls behind a well-known steakhouse. The manager comes out with 2 carts of dirty tablecloths and shirts, and a small envelope tucked under the top cloth. "This is for the extra runs last month," the manager says in a low voice. Manny nods. He does not open the envelope. He just places it under the driver clipboard and says that Vincent will be glad to keep them taken care of. Back at the plant, the envelope finds its way into the slim ledger world. A detective listening in would call it a sign. To Manny and Vincent, it is simply gratitude with numbers attached. At a busy hospital downtown, a purchasing agent named Ellen signs the laundry contract renewal. She has 3 bids in front of her. One is slightly cheaper. One is complicated. One is Central Linen, steady and known. She picks Central, partly because Vincent always has a truck there when they have an emergency spill, partly because the clean gowns show up wrapped tight, never short. Also because, a few years back, Vincent quietly arranged a donation of fresh blankets to a small clinic her sister worked at. Nobody told her how to choose the bid. Nobody had to. In the club, the older men are pleased. A hospital account is gold. Not because anyone wants to trouble a hospital, but because it means stability, volume, respectability. They tell Vincent he is doing well. They remind him to keep everything soft, No loud talk, no unnecessary drama. He agrees he prefers steam to smoke. One autumn, a new boutique laundry appears across town. They advertise eco-friendly methods and artsy branding. They chase a few of the same restaurant and hotel clients. Vincent does not panic. He calls on one of the oldest Italian restaurants in the city, where white tablecloths have covered decades of quiet conversations. Over late morning coffee, he listens as the owner mentions that the new place offered a good rate. Vincent nods. He politely reminds the owner how Central never missed a pickup in winter storms, never lost a box of chef jackets, never left them short on a sudden holiday crowd. He also notes how confusing it can be to split orders: linen lost in transit, mixed bags, limited accountability. The owner stirs his coffee, frowns at the memories of past mix-ups with other vendors. He agrees to stay entirely with Central. That afternoon, the boutique laundry receives a gentle phone call. A friendly voice suggests focusing on residential customers, small cafes, places without long-standing arrangements. The message is very polite. They get the message. Somewhere in Brooklyn, Detective Russo adds a page to one of his quiet files. This is about service companies connected to familiar last names. He notes Central Linen, notes a shared address with a small holding company tied, years ago, to a man once mentioned in a federal case. Notes that several respected restaurants all use the same laundry despite having offers for cheaper options. None of this is enough for a charge. It is an outline of a pattern. He drives by the plant one night, sees steam curl softly into the cool air, sees Manny backing a truck in while humming along with the radio. Just laundry, he thinks, then writes down the plate number anyway. Inside, Vincent goes through the ledgers with methodical care. He checks that the declared revenue looks sensible, not too high for their size, not so low to raise suspicion. He checks that the extra envelopes balance out with the expectations of his silent partners. He checks that staff wages are on time. He understands something important. If you want to stay in business in his world, you keep the people who fold the sheets and drive the trucks content. They are the ones who could talk if they ever felt mistreated. So he does not mistreat them. In its own way, the laundry tries to be fair. One winter, a housekeeper from a small hotel loses her coat and pay envelope, both taken from the staff locker room by an unknown hand. The hotel shrugs. Vincent hears about it when the woman, close to tears, mentions it to one of his drivers. A week later, a plain envelope finds its way to her through the hotel office, containing enough money to cover what she lost plus a bit more. No note. No explanation. Vincent marks a figure in the slim ledger and considers it a cost of keeping the world calm. He does not want frightened people, he wants grateful ones. In the late evening, when the final loads are folded and stacked, the plant quiets. The last of the steam thins out under the ceiling lights. Machines slow and stop, floors are mopped, carts are lined in rows like patient animals waiting for morning. Vincent stands by the loading dock doors and breathes in the faint mix of detergent and metal. He thinks of the hospitals that will open their clean linen cupboards in the morning, the hotels that will strip beds and find no shortage, the restaurants that will lay out fresh cloths as if they appear by magic. He also thinks of the men at the club who trust his numbers, of Ellen at the hospital who trusts his drivers, of Maria who trusts him to keep the presses running and pay coming every week. He understands that his job is not simply to wash fabric, it is to keep trust looking crisp. Outside, the city glows with a tired kind of beauty. For the listener settling into bed, this part of the story is meant to feel like that last warm towel at the end of a long day. No sudden shocks, no loud accusations, just the awareness that somewhere in the quiet industrial zones, men like Vincent fold numbers as neatly as they fold sheets. That influence can ride along on delivery trucks without honking, rest with the rhythm of the machines, the steady spin, the hiss, the clack. Imagine each as the soft stop between one stack of cloth and the next. then let it all fade into white noise as Central Linen closes its doors for the night, ready to start again before dawn. Chapter 4. The Fish Market That Never Really Closes. Dawn comes cold to the river. In lower Manhattan, down by the old piers, the lamps glow a tired yellow against wet cobblestones. Trucks idle. Men in rubber boots move crates that shine with scales and ice. A gull calls overhead, impatient and sharp. The city above is still half asleep. Down here, business is already in full breath. For decades, this waterfront market has been one of those places where everyone is awake before the rest of the world knows what it wants for dinner. Restaurants, hotels, caterers, little fry shops in the boroughs, they all depend on these dawn deals. The official lines say it is a regulated marketplace. Stalls assigned, prices posted, rules printed somewhere in an office file. The unofficial lines run through a man named Sal. Sal is not big or loud. He is solid, with a calm face and a coat that never seems quite warm enough for the river wind. He carries a clipboard in one hand and a warm paper cup of coffee in the other. The men on the docks nod when he passes. He does not shout orders. He asks simple questions. How is the catch? You set up all right? Anyone giving you a hard time? He knows who pays on time, who plays games with weights, who tries to sneak around stall assignments. He also knows which quiet offices uptown like their fish contracts steady and their complaints minimal. The market, in theory, belongs to the city. In practice, it belongs to routine. A stall owner named Tony is laying out boxes of ice and striped bass. He has been here since he was a teenager. He remembers his father paying men for the official stall fee and another man for something less official that came with protection and predictability. Over time, the second payment started feeling as normal as rent. Now Tony pays Sal. It is not described as protection. It is described as order. No confusion over who stands where. No surprise rival blocking the front with a truck. No mysterious lost shipments. In return, Tony gets what every small business really craves, a sense that tomorrow will look the same as today. At 4 a.m, that is worth a lot. A new fisherman arrives from out on the island, backing his truck toward the slips for the first time. He looks tired and proud. His cousin told him that this is where you come if you want to sell big. He climbs down and starts asking about where to unload. Sal appears at his elbow, polite as church. He asks the fisherman how the trip went, asks what kind of catch he has, asks who sent him. When he hears the cousin's name, Sal nods. He points to a decent spot along the row, not perfect, not terrible, explains the basic fees, explains the hours, adds, in his slow, friendly tone, that if the man wants to keep that spot and avoid unnecessary tangles, there is a small weekly amount he pays directly. The fisherman hesitates. Sal sips his coffee and waits. Then he says the words that were once said to Tony and many others. No pressure. You can say no, go your own way. Just know that if you are with us, your truck is safe, your stall is safe, your scale is trusted. If not, we cannot promise the same certainty. He smiles. The fisherman thinks about his boat payment, thinks about fuel, thinks about how it would feel to arrive for dawn and find his spot taken, or his tires cut, or his boxes delayed somewhere in the dark. He nods. Welcome to the market, Sal says. The arrangement is sealed not with threats, but with the relief of having someone to call when something goes sideways. A few hours later, the real circus begins. Buyers arrive from every part of the city. Chefs in white coats, coat collars up against the chill. Men with clipboards from hotel chains. Owners from neighborhood joints where the menu never changes. They move fast, checking eyes, gills, color. Cash changes hands. Orders are marked. Ice is shoveled. Those who respect the quiet order find their favorite stalls easy to reach. Trucks clear a path. helpers wave them through. Those who try to muscle in or haggle too hard often seem to pick the slow line, the stall that runs late, the truck blocked in at the wrong moment. Nobody yells. The river clock just runs differently for different people. A city inspector pays an early visit once a week. He walks the aisles with a clipboard, checking temperatures and cleanliness. He nods at some stalls, lingers a little longer at others. Sal greets him with that same polite warmth. A coffee appears from somewhere. A card with delivery information for a charity fish donation finds its way into the inspector's hand. The inspector is not foolish. He has heard the stories of markets in other cities where some families kept tight grip on stools, trucks, and scales. He also knows this market, for all its whispered arrangements, runs smoothly. He does his job. He closes a stall maybe for sloppy handling. Nobody interferes. The stall owner knew better and got lazy. After hours, Sal has a quiet chat with the man, reminds him that order is what keeps the right people from taking too close a look at everything else. Next day, the stall is spotless. On a chilly Thursday, Detective Russo appears at the edge of the sheds. He is following one of his hunches again, the ones that never make it to urgent memos. Years of cases have taught him that big stories hide in plain, boring places. Garbage routes, concrete plants, fish markets. He walks slowly along the wet floor, watching. He notes that some stalls are crowded, some are always half empty. He sees envelopes change hands with the same casual grace as cigarette packs. He spots Sal and recognizes the stance, a man who does not need to announce that he is in charge. Russo buys a small bag of shrimp he does not need, listening. What he hears is mostly ordinary. Orders called out, prices argued, jokes traded. But he also hears what buyer complain that he cannot get near a particular supplier without going through Sal. He hears Sal assure a stall owner that certain bills will not be a problem, as long as the weekly arrangement stays respectful. One of the fishermen notices Russo lingering and asks who he is. Sal steps in, jokes that he is just another customer. Russo smiles, raises his bag of shrimp, says he cannot resist a good price. He leaves with a small receipt and a mental note. Now the fish market joins the quiet list in his mind, alongside the carting offices and concrete yards, places where boring goods move with suspicious precision. Back at the dock, one of the younger stall owners, Joey, tries to get clever. He has noticed the power in guiding buyers. He has a cousin with a boat and thinks he can start funneling more business to him by ignoring the unofficial stall rotation. For 2 mornings, Joey drags his racks a little farther forward, blocking part of the path used by a senior stall holder who has been paying Sal since the 70s. Sales shift. Voices rise, but not too much. On the 3rd morning, Joey arrives to find a truck parked squarely across his usual unloading area. The driver takes a long time moving. Another truck arrives with a large delivery for his senior neighbor, and needs space too. By the time Joey gets his fish to the ice, the best buyers have already walked past. Sal appears beside him, calm. "You are blocking traffic," he says. "This market runs on traffic." Joey grumbles something about needing better position. Sal listens, then explains in a level tone that those positions are not taken on a first push basis, that everyone here plays their part so that nobody has to wake up to anything worse than a bad price. He does not mention broken anything. He does not need to. He just says, "You come back to your spot tomorrow and everyone gets to work in peace." Joey looks at the slow morning, the unsold fish. He says fine. The next day he is back where he started. Traffic flows, the lesson settles in. A few nights each month, Sal visits a small restaurant nearby where many of the dock workers end their shift. He sits at a corner table with 2 older men whose names are known only to those who need to know them. They eat simple meals, pasta with clams from the very market they guide, bread, wine poured discreetly. Sal reports in a level voice. Which stalls are doing well? Which boats are reliable? Which buyers are thinking of going around the usual channels? The older men are pleased to hear that the market remains calm. They remember when control here was sharper, when crates were reminders and warnings louder. Those days brought too many headlines. Now they prefer this slow version. Fees that look like stability charges. Favours that look like charity. A market that City Hall can praise as efficient. If anyone asks who keeps it that way, the answer is simple. The men who wake up early and never raise their voice. As the years move, some of the old infrastructure begins to shift. Rumours start about moving the fish market away from this aging pier to a newer complex further up the boroughs. More space, better refrigeration, more official oversight. Sal listens. Change is dangerous and also full of opportunity. He quietly helps smooth the transition for his chosen stall owners, making sure they get spots in the new buildings, making sure the same familiar hands handle truck routes, storage, accounting. If new officials step in, they are greeted by a machine that already runs itself. They are told that these are the vendors you can count on. And so the soft control follows the market to its new home as neatly as fish on ice in the back of a refrigerated truck. For the listener, the fish market story is not here to trouble your sleep. It is to show how even the smell of salt and scales at dawn can be part of a calm design. How men like Sal trade on routine and predictability instead of storms. Imagine the cold floor under your feet for a moment, then step back into bed. Hear the clatter of crates, softened by distance. Hear the low murmur of deals made in plain sight. Know that for every sharp legend told about wild nights and dangerous acts, there are 1,000 quiet mornings like this, where the real influence passes in casual greetings and careful stall assignments. As the market winds down and trucks pull away with their chilled cargo, the sky brightens. Office towers wake up, apartments stretch. Somewhere uptown, a chef inspects a fresh delivery and nods with satisfaction. Somewhere in a small neighborhood spot, a cook lays out fish for a special and trusts that it will keep the regulars happy. They do not think about Sal. You, drifting toward rest, can let him fade too. Let the sound of water against the pilings slow in your mind. Let the first rush of dawn business fall quiet. The fish market never really closes, not in this story, but its rhythm is steady and known, and that, in the world we are walking through, is the most powerful promise of all. Chapter 5. Parking lots, garages, and the art of standing still. Rain taps softly on car roofs on Midtown Manhattan. Just off a busy avenue, a concrete garage yawns open to the street like a patient cave. Outside, cabs hiss past on wet asphalt. Inside, the air smells of rubber, damp stone, and old coffee from a paper cup on the booth counter. A flickering sign offers early bird specials and overnight rates. Drivers roll in, hand over keys, and hurry away to offices, shops, theatres, quiet affairs, loud meetings. They enter with worries and appointments. They leave their cars and, without knowing it, step into someone else's ledger. The garage is run by a slim company name on paper and by a different name in conversation. The working face of the place is Leo. Leo wears a dark jacket, never quite buttoned, and a tie that has seen too many shifts. He keeps a pencil behind his ear and a small stack of tickets in his pocket. He has the easy half smile of someone who can remember every car, every plate, and every regular customer without looking at a list. He knows the morning lawyer whose imported sedan always gets a corner spot, the theatre manager who pays cash and likes to park near the elevator, the driver from a certain social club downtown whose visits are not to be noted too visibly. He also knows that a portion of every ticket flows upward, beyond payroll and rents, to men who have been watching garages since the days when coin boxes hung on poles outside nightclubs. Parking is simple at street level. You arrive, You pay, you go. In the books that matter, it is a slow river of small bills that can be guided without drawing attention. A grey morning begins with the usual rhythm. Engines idle, wipers sway. Leo takes keys with a nod, tears ticket stubs, and sends attendants to tuck cars into narrow spaces that only long practice can find. Tommy, one of the younger attendants, trots up the ramp with an umbrella stuck through his belt. He slips into a sedan, eases it into a tight slot, and returns at a careful jog. To him, this is just a job. Tips, fumes, a stiff back at the end of the day. He has heard jokes that the garage owners have friends in certain families. He has also heard jokes about everything in this city having friends in certain families. Jokes are air here. At the booth, Leo does quiet math. He knows how many cars came in, how many paid in cash, how many paid by card, the newer habit that some of the older men dislike. Cash can be bent like soft wire. Card receipts sit there like little witnesses. So Leo has a system. Early hours, more honest. Peak hours, some tickets never make it fully to the register. Night hours, when people hand over folded bills in a hurry, numbers might slide a bit. Not too much. Just enough to grow a quiet cushion. Once a week a man named Frank stops by, walking in with the unhurried step of someone who never worries about losing a parking spot. He is older than Leo, heavier around the middle, with careful hair and calm eyes. He wears a simple coat, carries no clipboard. They talk in the booth between cars. Frank asks if the neighbours are giving trouble. Any inspectors snooping? Any kids tagging walls? Leo mentions a minor complaint from the office building next door about exhaust at closing time. Frank says he will pay them a visit with a box of pastries and a promise to keep engines from idling too long. Then Leo slides a thick envelope across the counter, under a folded newspaper. Frank rests his hand on the paper for a moment, like it is nothing. "You are doing fine," Frank says, and just like that, the garage stays under the right shade of quiet. In another part of the city, and in New Jersey, and in Chicago, and in other dense corners of America, the pattern repeats. Parking lots ring stadiums, circle hospitals, cling to airports, tuck between brick apartment houses. Each one is a small asphalt island where cash changes hands all day. Officially, most belong to holding companies, investment partners, developers. Unofficially, enough of them send envelopes like Leo to men like Frank to make the whole chain worth watching. Detective Russo has noticed. One afternoon, he sits in an unmarked car across from Leo Garage. He watches people pull in and out. He times the flow, cross-checks in his mind how many stubs he guesses against what he suspects ends up on paper. He is not trying to shut down a garage. He is mapping how small places like this add up to larger things. An attendant jogs up. Russo flags him over and asks the rate for an hour. The kid rattles it off, polite but distracted. Russo nods, pays, pulls in, sits in the half-light watching Leo in the booth. He sees Frank arrive, sees the talk, sees the envelope. He notes the time, the plate, the face. Another line on another quiet chart. But other cases tug at him. Urgent ones. Parking always looks manageable compared to sirens. The men above Leo understand that perfectly. In an office far from the damp concrete of the garage, pages are laid out across a table. On each page, a different company name. Long strings of words that sound harmless. One controls 5 garages in Manhattan. Another, 7 lots in New Jersey near the bridges and tunnels. Another, 3 structures near a major stadium. Everything is owned by something that is owned by something that, if you go far enough back, leads to a short list of trusted men. To them, these properties are not glamorous trophies. They are boring machines that print small, reliable sums. They are also useful in other quiet ways. At the Midtown garage, a black sedan pulls in mid-afternoon. Leo recognizes it. The driver steps out, says he will only be a little while. Leo gives him a nod usually reserved for very good regulars. The car gets a safe space near the wall, away from careless doors. Later, another man arrives and is shown to the same car. No fuss. Keys move, papers move, a few documents pass from glove box to briefcase. No one on the sidewalk sees. Parking garages are perfect for small, unnoticed handoffs. Cameras see rows of cars, not whispered exchanges. Microwave dinners heated in the attendant room, not conversations above them. Still, Leo is careful. He knows that the strength of his world lives in never drawing the wrong sort of light. When a new independent operator opens a small lot 2 blocks away and advertises cheaper evening rates, some of Frank's associates take interest. Frank visits Leo. "We do not mind people eating," he says. "We mind people reaching for our plate." The next day, a man named Nicky drops by the new lot. He pays for an hour, looks around, chats with the young owner about insurance, security, local issues. The owner is proud, talks about beating the prices of the bigger garages. Nicky listens, nodding, then gently suggests that working alongside the established operators might keep things smoother, that there is room for everyone, as long as nobody undercuts too aggressively on certain blocks. A friendly agreement, he calls it. The young owner hesitates, then agrees to raise his rates just a little. He decides he would rather not test what unfriendly looks like. Unfriendly, in this neighborhood, does not have to mean anything dramatic. Sometimes it just means a sudden spike in minor vandalism, or a city inspector who finds a list of violations that take costly weeks to fix, or a snowstorm where plows, somehow, clear every nearby block first. The message is always the same. Work with the quiet map, and life is easy. Work against it, and gravity feels heavier. Out by a ballpark on the edge of town, another lot tells the same story in different colors. Game nights bring hundreds of cars, cash waves in gloved hands. Attendants wave flags and shout flat rates. Among the shouting, there is one lot where the shouting is more controlled. The signs are clear, the lines are straight, the attendants are polite. This lot also belongs to one of the quiet companies. From here, money moves up the ladder, some of it reported, some of it not. A portion may help fund legal defense when someone important needs it. A portion may support a cousin campaign. A portion stays in reserve. To the fans, it is just the place they leave the car before hot dogs and innings. To the men reading the envelopes later, it is proof that small parking spaces can support large patients. One evening, Detective Russo leaves a game and chooses the quiet lot on purpose. He watches the flow as he pays. No receipts offered unless requested. Handfuls of bills dropped into a metal box beside the booth. He pictures, uninvited, where those unpaid slips might resurface. He walks away with his coat collar up, wondering again why the most effective networks choose the most boring places. Back at Leo Midtown Garage, the night shift settles in. The rain has stopped. The pavement outside reflects red and white lights like slow rivers. Inside, the garage is mostly quiet now. A few cars sleep on the upper levels. A pair of attendants share a story in low voices. Leo sits in the booth going through a stack of tickets. He counts, subtracts, makes a neat bundle for the official books and another for the envelope that will go to Frank. He is careful not to get greedy. Greed brings questions. Questions bring people like Russo. Steady is safe. As the clock creeps past midnight, a lone sedan pulls in. The driver looks tired, maybe from work, maybe from something else. "I will only be an hour." Leo gives him a nod, takes the keys, hands a ticket. He does not need to know the rest. That is another quiet use of garages. They hold stories without ever telling them. For the listener sinking deeper into the pillow, this chapter is a walk through dim, stacked levels where nothing explodes and nothing chases you. Just cars resting, strangers passing, and a handful of men who understand how to turn standing still into a business model. Imagine the soft echo of footsteps on the ramp, the clink of keys on a hook, the low, distant city sound pushed back by concrete walls. In that echo, deals are honoured, maps are kept, and envelopes change hands with no raised voices. As you drift, let the image fade to a single booth light in a wide, quiet garage. Leo closing his ledger, turning the sign to closed for the slowest hours. Above him, towers glow. Below him, nothing moves. The money from these parked cars has already moved where it needs to go. You, on the edge of sleep, can let the garages blend into the background of the city in your mind. Safe, boring, and precisely how certain people like it. Chapter 6. Vending machines, jukeboxes, and background music. Neon has a way of softening the dark. In a corner diner on a Queens Avenue, a row of glowing rectangles hums beside the door. Soda in glass bottles, candy bars, little bags of chips. Next to them, a jukebox waits with its quiet promise of songs to fill the room. The coffee is strong, the eggs are basic, and the night is held together by light and sound. Most customers see the machines as simple comforts. Put in a coin, get a treat. Press a button, hear your favorite tune. To a certain circle of men, they are also lines on a careful map. This part of the story belongs to Benny. Benny is not large, not small, not loud. His most notable feature is that everyone seems to know him without remembering when they met. He wears neat shirts, carries a ring with too many keys, and smells faintly of machine oil and cologne. He services jukeboxes, cigarette machines from an earlier era, snack machines in bowling alleys, soda machines in laundromats, game cabinets in bar corners. If it blinks, takes coins, and plays a tune or gives a snack in certain neighbourhoods, there is a decent chance Benny has a key to it. Late one evening he steps into the diner. The bell on the door rings once. The waitress nods. The owner lifts a hand without pausing in conversation. Benny walks straight to the jukebox. With an easy motion he opens the back, checks the selection cards, counts the coins, wipes dust from the wiring. Bills are folded and tucked away. A percentage will stay with the diner. A percentage will follow Benny home to his bosses. He does the same with the vending machines. Coins in, coins out, stacks sorted, numbers scribbled. To anyone watching, he is just the machine guy. To the quiet network above him, he is the one who makes sure their silent partners have the right to hum in half the jukeboxes in town. Years ago, before Benny took over, there had been noisy battles about jukebox routes. Fists, broken glass, ugly rumours. Too messy. The new way is calmer. A region is divided. Certain diners, bars, social clubs, bowling alleys and truck stops are under one arrangement. Another cluster belongs to a different set of men, who know better than to cross into Benny streets without a talk first. The rule is simple. Do not move in on a location that already has a box or a machine handled by our people. Ask before you place anything that takes coins. In return, you get service. Machines that never sit broken for long. Fresh records. Candy that is not older than the customers. Owners like the stability. In that Queen's diner, the owner, Mrs. Romano, walks over as Benny closes the jukebox. She asks about a new song her nephew likes. Some soft soul tune that has been playing on the radio. Benny smiles, says he can add it to her box next week. People will pay to hear it, he says. She nods, pleased. She knows that a portion of the quarters leaving the jukebox never show up on her books. She also knows that when a drunk customer once shoved the machine and cracked the glass, Benny had a replacement front installed by the next afternoon. No question. She will not be switching vendors. Across the river in a New Jersey bowling alley, the lights glow a little harsher. Families in rented shoes roll frames. Teenagers lean against pinball machines and old arcade cabinets. Here too, Benny has keys. He moves through the rows with a casual air, checking coin boxes, wiping screens. He jokes with the manager, hands over the alley share, tucks the rest into a plain bag. Outside, in the damp night, a man waits by a dark sedan. Benny gets in. The man is called Artie. Older, deliberate, wearing the patient expression of someone who has listened to a lifetime of excuses and stopped accepting many. He asks how the week looks. Benny gives modest totals. Artie nods. Vending is never the big money, Artie says, but it is good glue. Glue is his word for the way small things hold larger structures together. A jukebox in a bar earns coins and hears conversations. A game cabinet in a club gives the younger cousins a reason to stop by. A soda machine in a warehouse break room is a reason to visit, check in, see which trucks come and go. Machines are excuses that do not look like excuses. One afternoon, a sales rep from a clean new vending company walks into the Queen's diner. He has shiny brochures and promises lower commissions. He talks about fresh branding and national service. Mrs. Romano listens politely. She says she already has a vendor. She says he is dependable. The rep insists. Offers to remove the old machines at no cost. She shakes her head. After he leaves, she calls Benny. An hour later, Benny is there with a calm smile. He thanks her for the loyalty. He also quietly takes down the name of the ambitious rep and the company on the glossy card. That name circulates. Soon the rep finds that every promising location he calls on in certain neighborhoods has suddenly become very loyal to its current vendor. Doors that opened easily elsewhere feel stuck here. If he pushes, someone like Artie may invite him for coffee. Coffee and a friendly talk about territories, shared interests, and how nobody wants broken machines or misunderstandings. Most reps decide there are easier parts of the map to color in. Meanwhile, Detective Rousseau begins to notice an odd pattern in his off hours. He has never been able to turn off the part of his mind that marks down little details. At a diner in Brooklyn, he drops a coin in a jukebox, and the label on the back has the same small distribution company name he saw at a bar in Manhattan and a bowling alley in Queens. Different neighborhoods, same supplier. He sees arcade machines near a pier with the same tiny sticker. Soda machines in a factory cafeteria with the same phone number. It could be just a successful company, or it could be another strand in the same web. He runs the name through his office system on a slow day. The machine spits back a list of offices and addresses. One of the holding companies links, barely, to a name Rousseau has seen in his carting and concrete files. He frowns, but the connection is thin. Nobody is being hurt. Nobody is complaining. If anything, most of the places look safer and better run than their competitors. Rousseau files it away in the cabinet of things that add up someday. Back in the field, Benny is doing his rounds on a rainy night when one of his machines jams. At a shabby bar under an elevated train line, a jukebox dies in the middle of a ballad. The drunkest regular bangs his fist on it. The owner curses softly. Benny arrives within the hour. He opens the back, pulls a fuse, checks the wiring, cleans the coin track. Talks easy with the owner the whole time. When the music clicks back on, the bar cheers as if he has performed a magic trick. He laughs, waves it off, and quietly empties the cash box while attention is on the song. Service is half the business, the other half is presence. In those same bars and diners, Benny hears names. Hears which truck drivers complain about new fees, which clerks grumble about an investigation, which kids brag about a score they made boosting car radios. Most of it is noise. Sometimes, once in a while, a piece of information floats up that Artie will want to hear. Not about songs. About which corner might need calming, which cop might be curious. The machines are ears that everybody feeds without thinking. In Las Vegas, under a different sky and brighter signs, cousins of Benny walk casino floors, checking jukeboxes in lounges and snack machines in back hallways. The amounts there are bigger, but the idea is the same. Control the small things, and you are always welcome backstage. One year, a reform-minded council member in a northeastern city notices that most jukebox contracts run through a handful of companies rumored to be connected to families spoken of in federal hearings. He announces a push for open bidding. Upstairs, above a cafe, Artie reads the article and sighs. He tells Benny there will be paperwork. They prepare neat, respectable proposals, they trim obvious ties, they put loyal clients on record as references, they are careful. When the dust settles, some contracts go to shiny new firms, many stay where they have always been. Because when a diner owner or bar manager is asked to choose, the deciding memory is not a headline, it is who showed up that night the machine broke down. While all this turns quietly, the life of the jukebox itself evolves. Records give way to cassettes, then discs, then digital systems. Machines grow smaller inside and simpler to service. Benny's keyring changes, but his role does not. Route driver, collector, mechanic, listener. He grows older, trains a nephew. By the late 80s, some bars swap heavy jukeboxes for sleek new units with tiny screens. The glow changes, but the coin slot still waits like an open palm. In a soft twilight scene near the end of that decade, Benny sits in an empty diner after hours. A plate of eggs in front of him, his keys on the table. Mrs. Romano is closing up. She thanks him for all the years of fixing things before they truly broke. He nods and says that as long as the music has a home, people will keep coming. He does not say that as long as the machines sit there, someone like him will have reason to walk in and out of 100 places without being questioned. He does not need to. For you, listening in the dark, this chapter is a low soundtrack behind the rest of the story. The murmur of a jukebox in the corner, the clack of coins, the faint buzz of neon over a snack machine. No rush, no chase, only the understanding that in this calm empire, even the songs and soda are part of the map. As your eyes grow heavy, let the images settle. A diner booth at midnight lit in pink and blue, a man with a keyring counting softly, a tune you like beginning to play as if on request. Background music, background money, background influence. All of it designed to keep things just the way they are for just a little longer while the city drifts between waking and sleep. Chapter 7. Construction Dumpsters and the Business of Debris. By sunrise, the city is already shedding its skin. On every other corner there is a building half gutted, a storefront under renovation, a brownstone with its front steps draped in tarps. Wood scraps, broken tile, plaster chunks, twisted metal, plastic wrap, old cabinets. All of it has to go somewhere. The answer is the big metal box. Painted in dull colours, stenciled with a company name and a phone number, parked in the street like a patient animal. A roll-off dumpster. Most people never think about who owns that box. They only notice when it is too full or in their parking space. In this part of the story, those boxes form another quiet map. The man at the centre is called Lou. Lou runs a carting and container company based out of a fenced yard by the river in Brooklyn. The yard holds rows of dumpsters stacked like giant toy blocks, trucks with hoists, a trailer for the office, a few portable toilets, coils of chain, and an old dog that sleeps through everything. Lou is broad in the shoulders, soft in the voice. He wears a cap most days and a buttoned shirt with his name on a patch. He calls everyone buddy, kid, or pal, like a man who never has time to search for names. On paper, his company is one of several that rent containers to construction sites and haul debris to transfer stations and landfills. In practice, his firm has something the others do not. A quiet blessing from men who once shaped the garbage routes and never entirely left the field. At 6 in the morning, the phone in the trailer rings. A contractor on the Lower East Side needs a 30-yard box for demo debris. Another in Queens needs a smaller container for a storefront remodel. A developer in Brooklyn Heights wants 2 boxes rotated all week for a full gut renovation. Lou notes each request in tidy handwriting. He never sounds surprised when someone calls. That is because, in many neighborhoods, if a contractor asks anyone who to call for a dumpster, the answer is his number. Not because of the ad he once ran in the paper, because an older foreman told a younger one, and so on. When an outsider company tries to drop boxes uninvited, the system notices. The first sign is always boring: a permit issue, a complaint that the box is blocking sightlines, a city truck adding a chalk mark and a warning. The second sign is a phone call. Lou, or someone for him, reaches out to the outsider. Calm, friendly. He explains that the block is already covered, that people are used to his service, that it would be smoother if they focus on another area. Sometimes the outsider agrees, sometimes not. That is when gravity shifts. On a Wednesday morning, a contractor named Henry tries to be clever. He picked a new container company from a flyer. They came in cheaper than Lou. They dropped a shiny box in front of his townhouse project, tagged with a bright logo that does not belong in this story. For a day, everything is fine. On day 2, a neighbor complains about noise and dust, as neighbors often do. The city inspector arrives and looks first at the bright new box. He checks the permit number against his clipboard. The paperwork is fine. Still, he lingers. He notes minor violations: a cone missing, a reflector loose. On day 3, a car scrapes the corner of the box, pulling out of a tight space. The driver blames the placement, threatens to file a claim. The contractor feels a headache coming on. That afternoon his phone rings. A man from Lou Yard, polite and relaxed, introduces himself. He says Lou heard Henry was having some trouble, says their company knows how to place boxes to keep everyone calmer, says they can swap out that bright box with one of theirs by morning, no issue. Henry hesitates. The man adds that the inspector knows their outfit, that neighbors are used to seeing their paint job. Henry imagines another week of minor complaints. He agrees. By sunrise, the bright box is gone. In its place, a dull, familiar color and Lou phone number. The work continues. The complaints ease. This is how territories are enforced now, with nudges that feel like favors. At the yard, a driver named Al loads a container onto his truck. He runs most of the Brooklyn Loop. Al is used to tight streets, double-parked cars, sudden school crossings. He does not spend his time thinking about invisible maps. He thinks about routes, traffic, coffee, and the next box he has to pick up. But even Al knows there are some blocks where you do not want to see anyone else, company logo. He once passed a site where a strange box sat in front of a building that had always used Lou. He mentioned it when he got back. By the end of the day, calls had been made. A week later, Lou boxes were back. Nobody ever told Al what exactly happened in between. He did not need to know. Inside a small office on the second floor of the yard trailer, Lou meets with 2 men who are older than him and dressed simpler. They sit at a metal desk and drink coffee from paper cups. Lou goes over numbers, how many containers are rented, how many sites are new, which developers are paying promptly. He also points out the names of a few contractors who like to play both sides. The older men listen. One of them reminds Lou to keep things reasonable, to leave small jobs alone if they want to try a different company, to focus on the big sites and key streets. "We are not greedy," the man says. "We are organized." Lou agrees. Organization, in this sense, means that when a big project starts, The phone numbers on the boxes are already decided before the first hammer swings. It also means that the debris itself sometimes travels with a story. Most loads are just plaster, wood, metal, brick. Some might carry items people prefer not to have seen twice. Old records, old equipment. Things that vanish nicely inside a torrent of rubble. Lou does not advertise that service. He does not need to. Contractors who understand how the world works know which company lets them sleep at night. One afternoon, a small community group complains to the city that certain blocks always seem to have the same container company, and that their trucks run heavy and loud. A council aide calls for a review of carting contracts and debris hauling. Detective Russo sees the memo cross his desk. He has been carrying threads from garbage, concrete, and laundries. Dumpsters fit the pattern like another puzzle piece. He takes a ride to Lou Yard. From the sidewalk outside the fence, it looks like any industrial lot. Stacks of boxes, diesel trucks, a dog sleeping on a pallet. Lou comes out when he hears a car idle too long at the gate. Russo shows plain identification, says he is looking into waste hauling practices. Lou is courteous. He talks about permits, safety rules, recycling targets, offers to email copies of his compliance documents, mentions that they donate bins for local cleanups sometimes. Russo walks the perimeter with his eyes, sees nothing dramatic. He knows from past cases that if there is anything more here, it will not be sitting on top of the pile waiting for him. He thanks Lou and leaves. In his car, he scribbles the company name next to a few others in his notebook. They all have that same quality, boring and everywhere. That night, Lou receives a phone call from one of the older men. They heard about the visit before he even took off his boots. He says Russo came by, asked routine questions. The voice on the other end tells him not to worry, tells him to keep his paperwork clean and his drivers careful. Attention passes, it always does, if you are not greedy. On a narrow street in Brooklyn, a renovation project runs into a different kind of trouble. Residents are tired of the noise. They complain about dust. They complain that the dumpster takes up 2 parking spots. Lou sends a man named Eddie to talk to them. Eddie rings doorbells, listens to grievances, nods. He promises earlier pickups, closer lids, less mess. He shifts the box a few feet to open no extra space. The mood softens. Eddie reports back that the neighbors are calmer. This too is part of the system. Soothing small fires before anyone thinks to ask bigger questions about why every big green or blue box has the same phone number. Occasionally, there is a contractor who thinks yelling will fix things. He calls Lou, angry about a late pickup, threatens to take his business elsewhere. Lou listens. He apologizes for the delay, offers a discounted haul, better timing on the next box. If the contractor stays loud, Lou suggests, very gently, that not every company can offer the kind of smooth relations with inspectors and neighbors that his can. Usually that is enough. For the few who still decide to switch, the path ahead tends to collect small annoyances. Most come back. By the late evening, the dumpsters stand full and silent. Trucks rumble through dark streets, hauling away the day fragments. Old walls, old tile, old wires. In distant transfer stations, debris is pushed into higher piles by heavy machines. Among all that noise, there is a calm in knowing that someone has already decided where each load will go. Lou sits in his trailer office with a pen and a calculator. He is not thinking about legends. He is thinking about tonnage, fuel, tipping fees at the dump, how many boxes need repainting, which drivers are due a raise. He also sets aside the share that will travel to the same older men who blessed his company to begin with. This is not charity. It is rent for the invisible map he occupies. For you listening, this chapter may feel like watching a slow, steady machine at work. The roll of trucks, the drop of containers, the scrape of shovels. There is tension here, but it is low level. The tension of knowing that even the broken plaster has someone counting it. As your eyes grow heavier, picture one of those quiet streets after a long day of work. The box is gone, the curb is swept, the building is a little closer to finished. Nobody remembers which company name was painted on the side of the metal container. Lou does. His partners do. The system does. You do not need to. Let the image blur into dark shapes, trucks as toy models rolling away in your mind, the sound of chains clinking as a soft lullaby. In this calm crime bedtime world, even the garbage from yesterday work is handled with composed hands. Nothing crashes, nothing explodes, only debris rising and falling in an orderly way, under the eyes of people who understand that control, at its quietest, is just deciding who is allowed to clean up. Chapter 8. Casinos, Carpets, and Quietly Watched Tables. Desert nights have a very particular kind of glow. Long after midnight, the Las Vegas Strip is still awake, but its loudest edges do not belong to this story. We are interested in the softer parts, the slow walks, the quiet floors covered in thick carpet that swallows footsteps. Inside one of the older casinos, the lights are gold instead of neon bright. Ceiling fans turn lazy circles. Dealers in pressed shirts move their hands with measured grace. Chips click in small, steady rhythms. For the vacation crowd, this is a playground. For a careful group of men back east, it is a faucet. One that runs as long as nobody shakes it too hard. The man we follow tonight is Marco. Marco is from Chicago by way of New Jersey. Dark hair, calm eyes, suits that are quiet but well cut. He walks like a man who notices everything without needing to turn his head. Officially, Marco is a hospitality consultant. Unofficially, he is the friendly inspector sent by certain families to make sure their interests in the desert remain smooth and safe. He does not run the casino. That honor belongs to executives with business cards, local licenses, and ties to chambers of commerce. Marco runs the part of the story that happens in the margins. He moves through the main floor. At one table, a tired couple from Ohio plays blackjack with uncertain smiles. At another, a group of salesmen leans over dice, laughing too loud, chasing Vine More roll. Marco is not interested in their wins or losses. Those are for the casino books. He is interested in the room upstairs behind the cage, where the real counting happens. In the early years, back when the desert resorts were first blooming, there were stories of how money left town before it to be taxed. Little pieces of the take skimmed gently from the top and flown or driven to friends in Kansas City, Chicago, Cleveland, New York. The method never needed to be dramatic. If the count room said one stack, the report might say a slightly smaller stack. The difference would travel. Marco arrived after some of the louder days had passed, after hearings and headlines named real casinos and real bosses. His job is to keep what remains soft and uninteresting. He steps into a side office where the soft carpet gives way to hard tile and ledgers. The manager on duty, a man named Harris, straightens when he sees him. They exchange a nod that is part friendship, part accounting entry. Marco asks about the month. Room occupancy, food and beverage, table hold. Nothing in his voice suggests anything out of the ordinary. Harris answers with numbers that sound solid. Then, smoothly, Marco asks if the special envelope has been prepared. Harris reaches into a locked drawer, places a plain package on the desk. Marco does not open it. He weighs it lightly in his hand, a man accustomed to guessing sums by feel. You see. You are consistent, he says. Consistency is the compliment that matters most in his world. Once a week, that envelope or one like it rides out of town with a courier, sometimes by car, sometimes in the lining of a suitcase. It does not need to be a fortune every time. It needs to be regular. Back east, older men in modest houses and quiet clubs receive those sums as proof that their early faith in desert casinos was not misplaced. They helped with introductions when permits were hard to get, helped with supplies when cement and steel needed to arrive on schedule, helped with security when unchecked trouble wanted to step onto the floor. Now the casino says thank you in steady, careful installments. Marco spends as much time watching the people as he does watching the books. He sees which dealers are too friendly with certain players, which pit bosses drink on duty, which hosts comp too many rooms to guests who do not lose enough. He is not quick to punish, he is quick to adjust. A dealer with wandering hands is moved off main games. A pit boss with loose talk is gently retired with a generous send-off. A host who forgets where loyalty goes finds his contact list claimed by someone more disciplined. Most corrections come with a smile and a pat on the shoulder. Good places do not like drama on the carpet. In the lounge, a singer in a silver dress leans into a slow standard. Couples sway. A few men in suits sit at a side table, listening more to the room than to the music. These are Marco colleagues, one from a Midwestern city, one from New York. They share quiet notes about how business is holding. The Midwestern man mentions that competition has grown. New properties, fancy themes, corporate money stepping into what used to be a private garden. Marco nods. He knows that when big corporations arrive with their own security and shareholders, the space for backroom understanding shrinks. They are living in the middle period. But the wild early days, not yet the fully polished corporate era. The trick now is to make sure that anything owed is settled before the bright lights of reform find it. Back in New York, Detective Russo reads about Las Vegas in the paper on his lunch break. Articles mention resorts linked in past years to families his files already know, hearings where senators asked casino bosses about hidden interests. Russo sips his coffee and wonders how many small parking lots and vending routes he has seen feed into something that reaches all the way to the desert. He will likely never get the full answer, but the pattern comforts his instinct. Nothing stands alone. Garbage, concrete, linen, stalls, garages, machines, and now these thick carpets and quiet tables. In the casino, Marco walks the high-limit room. The carpet is even deeper here, the lights softer. A man from Los Angeles plays with a stack of chips the size of a breakfast plate. A couple from the East Coast plays carefully, more impressed by the room than by their chances. A host leans in, offering drinks, show tickets, a midnight table at the steakhouse. Hosts are diplomats in this world. They manage egos, they remember anniversaries, they arrange driver pickups and wake-up calls. Some of them also know how to recognize the quiet visitors from back east. When a certain older gentleman arrives twice a year, he is met at the airport. A black car, a suite with drawn curtains, an envelope on the table with a simple note of respect. He does not stay on the floor. He walks it once, just to feel the hum, then returns upstairs. He wants to see that the place is clean. But spotless in a saintly way, but clean in the sense that no one is making trouble that will bring spotlights. Marco gives him a brief report. Regulators visited last month. Everything in order. A small incident with a card mechanic was resolved early. The numbers are steady. The special line item is on track. The older man listens, nods, and tells Marco to keep making it boring. Boring is safe. On another evening, a young pit boss named Ray tries to impress the wrong people. He has heard old stories from louder times and thinks a little toughness will raise his standing. He uses sharp words with a guest who is quietly important. Tries to show he is not afraid to flex house rules. Word reaches Marco before the night is over. The next morning, Ray is invited to a meeting in a back office. Marco sits there with the general manager. They do not shout. Marco explains, with the patience of someone folding a shirt, that respect is the first rule here, that certain guests do not stand in the same line as others. that the job is to keep the water flat, not to splash. Ray nods, chastened. A second mistake will mean a gentle transfer to a less sensitive property. The lesson lands. Behind the scenes, the old method of quietly collecting a share is under new kinds of pressure. Regulatory boards, auditors, federal agents who already made examples of some famous names. Marco adjusts. Some arrangements shift from direct skims to consulting fees, management contracts, loans repaid with generous interest. It becomes more paperwork, less cash in carefully folded bundles. The principle, however, remains. Those who help build the playground still expect a chair in the shade. At a small blackjack table on a slow Tuesday, a dealer fans the cards as a tourist from New Jersey asks if it is true what they say about certain families owning half the town. The dealer laughs it off, says those days are gone, says now it is all corporations. Marco, passing by at that moment, hears and does not correct him. The dealer is not wrong. The center of gravity is moving. Marco knows his own role is a bridge between eras. In the quiet bar off the main floor, he meets with a contact from back east who has flown in for a last look. The contact is older, shoulders heavy, eyes thoughtful. He says that soon the corporate teams will have so many auditors that even a whisper of side arrangements will be risky. He says the families have to be careful, step back where the light is strongest. They talk about bringing money home, investing it in more invisible things, warehouses, trucking firms, a share of a linen service here, a container yard there. The desert in this soft conversation becomes just another chapter. Marco listens. He has grown attached to the quiet music of chips and the way the carpet muffles worries. He also understands that his talent is not limited to casinos. His talent is making sure people who do not want to see certain lines never have to. Later, he walks the floor one last time for the night. A woman in a sequined dress laughs at a small win. A man in a short-sleeved shirt stares at the reels of a slot machine, hypnotized by colored lights. A group of friends takes a photo by a fake fountain, preserving a memory that will never include a thought of where the profits go. That is as it should be, he thinks. For them, this place is pure vacation. For him, it is proof that influence, properly handled, can be almost gentle. Across the country, Detective Russo closes his notebook on another long day. He has scribbled a line connect a New Jersey trucking firm to a Las Vegas supplier and smiled at his own stubbornness. He knows most of his delicate webs will remain unofficial. He goes home, puts his jacket on a chair, and lets the television play news about casino companies going public, about reforms, about clean gaming. He drifts to sleep knowing the truth is both better and worse than headlines. In your own bed, listening, you do not need every line either. It is enough to know that for a long season, some casinos were less about flashing danger and more about steady streams, carpets thick enough to hide footsteps, tables watched by calm eyes, envelopes counted twice, no chases down the strip, no dramatic showdowns, just patient men making sure numbers behave in ways that reward the right people and do not wake the wrong ones. As your eyes grow heavier, imagine the casino from a great height. The noise shrinks to a faint hum. The lights soften to a cluster of distant stars on the sand. Inside, dealers shuffle. Guests play. Hosts smile. In a back office, a plain envelope is sealed with careful hands. Then even that door closes, the last count is done, and night rolls on. You can let the image fade into dark. Another piece placed in the puzzle of garbage, cement, laundry, stalls, garages, machines, and now velvet ropes. All of it quieter than legend, all of it humming under a lullaby of shuffled cards and soft carpets, while you drift towards sleep. Chapter 9. Funeral Homes, Flowers, and Final Arrangements. Some businesses are built on silence, On a tree-lined street in Brooklyn, far from the loading docks and concrete plants, a funeral home keeps its lights low and its schedule careful. The sign out front is simple. A family name in modest letters. A pair of columns framing the door. Inside, carpets hush every footstep, and the air holds a soft blend of flowers, furniture polish, and incense from earlier days. This house belongs to the Bellini family. Officially, it has served the neighborhood for decades. Immigrant grandparents, local business owners, retired teachers. Children of the block who grew up and then, did not come home. Unofficially, it holds another role. It is neutral ground, a place where men with very busy ledgers come to say goodbye and to look each other in the eye without raising voices. Anthony Bellini, the current director, has the calm dignity his line of work demands. He is in his 40s, always in a dark suit that fits. His tie is straight, hands steady, voice low. He is the kind of man who remembers names, cousins, and favourite flowers. He speaks with care, like every word is part of a service. His staff know him as respectful and exacting. Caskets lined dust right, cars washed, candles placed with symmetry. Some of his clients know he is also extremely reliable, with arrangements that require particular discretion. On a soft rain morning, Anthony walks through the main viewing room. Chairs stand in neat rows, lamps throw warm, forgiving light. Two arrangements of white lilies flank an empty stand where a casket will soon rest. He pauses to adjust dust ribbon. In an office down the hall, his assistant is on the phone. A woman has called about her uncle. Old age, nothing sudden. She is nervous, unsure what to do. The assistant gently explains each step. The car they will send. The paperwork they will handle. The choices that can wait until the family has rested. This is the front layer of their work. Comfort, clarity, small mercies. Later that same day, Anthony meets with two men in the arrangement room. One is the son of a small shop owner who passed quietly. The other is a man whose name moves in whispers through the other chapters of our story. They sit at a polished table. Anthony goes through casket choices, service times, obituary notices, church coordination. He does not mention the extra visitors he knows will arrive in dark suits that evening. Men who knew the deceased not only as a shopkeeper, but as a voice in meetings above kitchens and in back rooms of social clubs. He also does not mention that his parking lot will be guarded quietly by familiar faces, that there will be no cameras inside, that no reporter will be allowed to wander close to the register of guests. These things are understood. The Bellini home has, over time, become the place where such send-offs are handled with extra care. Respect goes both ways. When men of influence need a place to honour their own, they come here. When Anthony needs a donation for a neighbourhood cause or a sponsor for a new hearse, he knows who will answer. It is all spoken in the language of community. One afternoon, Detective Russo signs his name in the condolence book by the door. He has come to pay respects to a retired precinct clerk, a woman who always made sure forms went where they ought to go. The room is quiet, soft music, murmured prayers. On the far side of the parlour, Russo notices a small knot of men in suits. Their faces are familiar from files, never from charges that stuck. They are here for another wake scheduled an hour later, one room over. The deceased in that room was a businessman with a modest company name and a very immodest reputation among detectives. Bellini has kept the two gatherings separate by design. Russo watches for a moment. Anthony glides between parties with ease. A word to a widow, a nod to a made-to-look unremarkable guest from the old stories. Everyone receives the same tone of sympathy. It is impossible to tell, from his manner, which family paid more or which name carries more shadow. That neutrality is part of why this home holds the position it does. No is embarrassed, no is paraded, only flowers, prayers, small speeches about loyalty, hard work, community. Sometimes the stories are even true. Rousseau leaves with a folded card in his coat pocket and a renewed sense that funerals are chapters where many threads meet. He knows other cities have had famous services, New York, Chicago, Boston, name after name carried out with more police on the street than in some parades. He also knows that most of the real decisions at those gatherings were made in low voices outside the camera's frame. Bellini understands all of this without ever needing to say so. In the preparation area, away from public eyes, he insists on professionalism. Every body, no matter who they were, is treated with consistency. He repeats this to his staff often. To him it is partly ethics, partly strategy. If an inspector, city or federal, ever takes too close a look at his operation, they will find everything in order. Licenses, sanitation, records. Nothing here should be sloppy enough to invite suspicion. His interactions with the quieter world stay in another column. That column is not in any visible ledger. It is in memories of calls received late at night. When someone important needs a service arranged not only well, but in a way that keeps certain details offline, not cover-ups of harm. Those belong in other, darker tales that this story does not choose to sleep beside. More often it is about timing, private visitation hours, doors opened for small group at strange times so they can sit with their loss away from attention. Anthony offers that without judging. He knows that grief is one of the few states that levels people. A long weekend comes when an older figure from a known family passes of worn-out years. The wake at Bellini home lasts 2 full days. Cars double park for blocks. Men in dark overcoats cluster in the doorway. Women with careful hair and strong perfumes murmur with rosary beads in hand. Inside the viewing room, the casket is surrounded by flowers. So many flowers that the scent is nearly overwhelming. Wreaths from restaurants, unions, clubs, charities. Ribbons with names that never appear in newspapers. Anthony moves through the crowd, guiding lines, smoothing small tension. A man from Winborough does not want to stand too near another from a rival circle. Anthony arranges them in different clusters. A federal agent loiters across the street. So do a few reporters, hoping to spot a rare combination of faces. Bellini staff keep the blinds angled. They keep doors from standing open too long. They are not obstructing justice. They are protecting privacy, or so everyone here prefers to describe it. For many attending, this funeral is also a quiet conference. Hands are shaken, hugs exchanged, old obligations acknowledged. No dares discuss new plans in this house. That would feel wrong, and Anthony would shut it down with a glance. But by standing in the same room, people see who is still standing strong, who is frail, who is absent. Information, in this place, is visual. That is enough. After the final service, when the cars roll out in a careful procession toward the cemetery, Anthony stands for a moment in the doorway. Rain has stopped. The air is cool and smells faintly of wet stone and flowers. He watches the line of vehicles turn the corner. He knows that in different circumstances, the same names could be moving under far harsher lights. Instead, today, they are in polished cars with small flags, following a hearse at a slow, dignified pace. This one of the subtle ways influence shows itself. Even at the end, respect is part of the price. Later, donations arrive, checks to local churches, envelopes for youth sports, promises of support for a scholarship in the name of the deceased. Anthony helps coordinate. Some of that money is very clean. Some comes from hands that do not have spotless ledgers. He focuses on the outcome. A new roof on a parish school, a reading room at the library. Public memory, shaped gently, is one of the softer tools in this quiet empire. In his own quiet way, Anthony believes that taking money from complicated lives and turning it into something that helps the neighborhood is better than letting it sit in a shadow. He does not say this out loud, but he sleeps a little easier thinking of the good caskets and the good projects, as part of the same long balance. Detective Russo, hearing about the funeral from colleagues, reads the list of reported attendees with eyebrow raised. He notes overlapping names from his own files. He also notes the donations that follow. If he were a different kind of investigator, he might try to dig deeper. He has come to understand that some forms of influence are better met with careful light than with swinging hammers. So he files this chapter in his mind as proof that even in farewell spaces, the same families keep orbiting the same rooms. That night, Bellini home is still. The flowers from the big service are rearranged into smaller bouquets. Some go to nursing homes, some to the church. The halls are mopped, candles trimmed, guest books closed. Anthony sits alone in his office, jacket off, tie loosened. He looks at his calendar for the week. Half his appointments are ordinary families with ordinary grief. A retired bus driver, a teacher, a grandmother who kept every birthday card. The other half are families with more expensive suits and fewer straightforward stories. He treats them all the same on the surface. Same coffee offered, same quiet voices, same folders of choices. He knows that is one of the reasons everyone keeps coming back. Consistency is his version of control. For you, listening on the edge of sleep, this chapter is a slow walk down a carpeted hallway. There is sadness here, but not the kind that jerks you awake. It is the softer understand that even in this world of garbage routes, cement, laundries, fish stalls, garages, machines, dumpsters and casinos, there is one place where everyone eventually arrives in the same silence. Funeral homes like Bellini do not swing the big deals. They keep the tone. They remind men who think of themselves as very powerful that in the end, someone else arranges the room and the flowers and the last ride. That knowledge has its own quiet influence. As your eyes grow heavier, imagine a viewing room after everyone has gone home. Chairs empty, flowers still, a guest book resting with its pages closed. Outside, the streetlights cast gentle pools on the sidewalk. Inside, Anthony turns off that lamp at a time. He locks the door with a soft click. The house sleeps until morning. In the calm crime story we are telling, this is not a place of fear. It is a reminder that every careful arrangement, every quiet favor, every handshake at a wake or a burial, is part of how influence survives another season without shouting. Chapter 10. Laundry again, this time for the soul. Night belongs to the people who agree to share it. In a corner of Manhattan that has seen more stories than it cares to count, an old diner holds a soft glow against the dark. The sign outside hums. The counter is polished. The coffee is only decent, but the cups are always full. It is late enough that the city noise has thinned to a steady hush. Inside, a few familiar threads from our quiet empire find themselves at neighbouring tables without fully planning it. Carlo from karting sits in a booth with his jacket folded beside him, a plate of eggs and toast cooling slowly. Angelo from concrete rests his elbows on the counter, his tie undone, staring into a cup like it holds blueprints. Vincent from laundry has a newspaper folded in front of him that he is not really reading. Sal from the fish stalls has salt in the lines of his hands and a faraway dawn in his eyes. Leo from the garage sits near the door, one eye on the street out of habit. Benny with the keys for the machines turns a spoon between his fingers, listening more than talking. Lou from the dumpster yard carries the weight of a long day in his shoulders but smiles easily. Anthony Bellini from the funeral home, jacket neat, tie straight even at this hour, sits a little apart as if he lives half a step to the side of every conversation. At a small table not far away, Marco the casino man is in town for a brief visit, his presence almost too smooth for the chrome and formica. And at the end of the counter, Detective Russo works on a slice of pie and a cooling coffee. The only one here who has tried to draw lines between most of these faces. Noah announces any of this. Noah stands to make a speech. The diner itself does the work of bringing them into the same soft light. The waitress calls Carlo Hon. She calls Russo detective, with a grin. She calls Benny jukebox man and Lou big guy. Names are fluid at this hour. Outside, trucks still move garbage, mixers still clean their drums, refrigerated vans whisper past, elevators in garages rest between floors, neon machines blink in bar corners, dumpsters sit like sleeping giants, casinos breathe in distant deserts, funeral homes hold their quiet. In here the world feels small enough to fold. Carlo glances at the clock. He is thinking of early roots, of keeping promises he never wrote down. Angelo thinks about a bridge project that is finally done, concrete cured into something people will walk over without a thought. Vincent counts in his head, not money, but people who depend on his laundry for steady shifts. Sal hears in his memory the clatter of crates and the early calls of buyers, glad those hours are behind him for the day. Leo hears the echo of the garage, the small click of each ticket, each set of keys. Benny thinks in songs and snack choices, about which machines he will have to retire soon, about a nephew learning the roots. Lou hears chain and diesel in his bones, a rolling chorus of boxes that must all be somewhere else by morning. Anthony holds the faces of the day in his mind, the griefs he has guided, the candles he has snuffed. Marco traces in his thoughts the curve of the strip, wondering how much longer envelopes will move the same way. Russo, fork motion slow, has them all in scattered notes across drawers in his office. He recognizes some eyes, some surnames mixed with others. He is tired but not cynical. He has seen worse than any of these men on their quiet nights. He has chased heat. He has seen harm that has no poetry, only impact. Compared to that, this network of boring businesses feels like a carefully folded sheet over something messier. Untidy underneath, maybe, but at least covering the sharpest edges. The television above the counter murmurs news without sound, new hearings, new commissions, new task forces with long titles. Words scroll along the bottom about organised crime, about rackets in construction and carting, about efforts to clean up industries that people like our quiet men have guided for years. The waitress uses the remote to click the screen dark. Too late for that, she says. The men in the diner mostly watch their coffee. They have learned that the story of their lives is now written by others, reporters, prosecutors, academics. Some of it is fair, some of it clumsy. Angelo speaks first, in a tone that could be about anything. Things change, he says. Carlo nods. Used to be a handshake carried 3 generations, he says. Now it barely carries to next year. Sal shrugs. Fish still needs to move, he says. Someone will always run the floor. Lou adds that someone will always need a box outside the job site. Someone will always call the number they hear from the last guy. Benny says as long as people like songs and snacks, somebody will wire the machines. Leo says as long as nobody wants to drive around the block all night, garages will be full. Vincent says sheets get dirty again the next day. Anthony says families will always need help on their worst mornings. Marco says casinos find new ways to shine, new ways to count, new hands taking a share. Russo listens to them without taking out his notebook. In this moment, he lets them be men talking about work. He knows what their work means. He also knows the city needs its garbage gone, its roads poured, its fish on ice, its cars parked, its jukeboxes humming, its debris hauled, its games managed, its dead respected. He draws a breath, lets it out slowly. You know, he says quietly, most of my worst nights never had any of your names in them. The table goes still for a heartbeat. He is not clearing them. He is not condemning them. He is telling a piece of his own truth. Then he adds, you all have your ways. Just remember, there are lines no one should cross. It is the closest he will come, tonight, to a warning. Carlo meets his eyes and inclines his head. We try to keep things from getting stupid, he says. Angelo says, we build. Vincent, we clean. Sal, we sort. Leo, we watch. Benny, we listen. Lou, we carry. Anthony, we honour. Marco, we adjust. Russo, we check. The waitress snorts softly as she refills their cups. You all overthink, she says. The joke lets the air loosen. Outside the diner windows, the early 1980s are turning into the late 1980s. Commissions are digging. New laws tangle with old arrangements. Some of the men above our quiet circle will end up on the evening news, sitting in courtrooms under newly serious lighting. There will be trials, some convictions, some surprises. Pieces of the old map will break apart. New owners will arrive with briefcases and brands, some clean, some not as clean as they look. Garbage will be reformed, and then quietly argued over again. Concrete bidding will change, then slowly drift toward familiar patterns under different names. Laundry chains will expand. Fish markets will move to new buildings. Casinos will become corporations. Parking will sprout digital arms. Vending will be rewrapped in bright logos. Dumpsters will carry new decals. Funeral homes will modernize their brochures. Through all this, the idea at the heart of our story remains. Power that chooses boring clothes can live a long time. It smooths sharp edges. It prefers envelopes to explosions. It prefers polite reminders to sudden harm. It can trap people too. It can keep prices high, choices narrow, voices cautious. We are not polishing it into a fairy tale. We are simply acknowledging that for many years, in many places, the most enduring parts of the underworld were woven through services people needed when they woke up, when they went to work, when they came home, when they laid down to rest. Russo finishes his pie. He looks around that diner and sees not legends, but men approaching middle age and past it, carrying specific kinds of tired. He knows some will face question in rooms with microphones, knows some will slide out quietly, knows some will hand their roots or keys or ledgers to younger relatives who grow up in a city with less patience for the old ways. He leaves cash on the counter, nods to the room, and steps out into the cool air. The bell on the door rings once. Carlo checks his watch and thinks about the first truck. Angelo thinks about the next pour. Vincent thinks about the first delivery. Sal thinks about tides. Leo thinks about the garage gate. Benny thinks about coin boxes. Lou thinks about boxes waiting in rows. Anthony thinks about tomorrow's services. Marco thinks about flights between coasts. They are not a council. They are a constellation. Scattered points, connected in ways most people never see, all circling the same quiet idea. Control the boring things, and you touch everything. For the listener, this is the moment to fold the map up. We have walked through garbage routes at dawn, concrete pours at sunrise, steam-filled laundries, riverfront markets, stacked garages, humming machines, heavy dumpsters, soft casinos, and flower-lined parlours. We have watched Detective Russo tracing patterns in pencil instead of fire. We have listened to men who built their lives on making sure the city never runs out of the ordinary. Nothing in this story asks you to cheer. Nothing here lurched at you with sudden horror. Instead, it laid out how quiet arrangements wrapped themselves around necessary work, how old families learned that the safest armour was routine. If there is any kind of laundry for the soul in all of this, it is in the small moments when these same networks chose stability over spectacle, when Carlo let a struggling restaurant slide so workers kept their jobs, when Angelo made sure a hospital foundation pour did not fail, when Vincent replaced a stolen envelope for a housekeeper, when Sal calmed a dispute so fishermen still had a market, When Leo gave a secure spot to someone who had reason to be nervous, without question. When Benny kept the songs running in places that needed no good tune to soften a long week. When Lou donated boxes for a neighborhood cleanup and picked them up without charging. When Anthony helped families who could barely pay, because grief does not check bank accounts. When Marco leaned on respect instead of fear to correct a mistake on the floor. When Russo chose to see nuance instead of trying to unmake the entire working city in one blow. These are not absolutions. They are reminders that inside systems with rough edges, individual choices can still tilt gently toward care. As you drift toward sleep, see the city from high above. Late-night streets, a garbage truck turning a corner, a mixer parked drum-rinsed, steam rising from a laundry vent, a market dark and hosed down, stalls waiting for dawn, garages glowing faintly from within, neon blocks of vending machines in empty halls, dumpsters standing ready at tomorrow job, a far casino tiny on the horizon, a funeral home lamp burning low for rent family. The city is complicated. It always has been. But right now, for you, it is quiet. Our story of boring businesses and calm crime has set itself down for the night. Nothing to chase, nothing leaping from dark corners. Only a web of slow decisions, made by people who discovered that the surest way to hold power without shaking the world is to hide it in routines that let everyone sleep. You can close your eyes knowing that this tale stays at arm's length. It is not a call, it is a map folded and put away. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the trucks, the drums, the steam, the waves, the motors, the coins, the wheels, the carpets and the bells all fade into a single soft hum. Garbage taken, roads poured, sheets folded, fish packed, cars parked, songs queued, debris hauled, tables watched, names remembered. The boring businesses are doing what they always wanted to do, working quietly in the background while you rest.